what is the ideal composition of a board, if there is an ideal composition, with reference to the three dimensions we've been talking about?
I don't think there is any ideal composition, and especially as far as gender diversity goes, it is quite important. And digital would depend a lot on the nature of the business. For example, if there's an industrial company, I don't see any particular need right at this moment. I mean, maybe after 5 years or 10 years, when the whole economy has become more into the digital sector, it might be important. But right now, I think the digital aspect is more for consumer companies, because the sales, marketing, retailing has become quite digital. Whereas in industrial companies, I don't see that impact anymore. So I wouldn't say that there is any ideal nature.
But wouldn't one of the jobs of the board be to look 10 years ahead and help build that vision? So it's not there today, but tomorrow?
Yeah, but it's how the economy evolves. I mean, if it is basically all these things are in the self-interest of the companies. If they feel that they have a diversified board, if there is a need, and if they can contribute, then they will have it. I don't see one doesn't have to push all these things.
Do you think if we don't push, we will miss the buck in any which way?
Well, good companies will do it, If it is in their interest, they'll do it. I mean, why? They don't need legislation or anything.
Absolutely. My next question is to you, sir. How critical is it to have a board member with a digital background? It's being talked about, we saw the research. And is it relevant only for a technology or e-commerce kind of business, kind of companies, or all across?
I'll give you an interesting example. So we've got this business of copper, right? Copper smelting business, and we've got copper mines, etc. So we were going through a review, and in the review, they made a passing reference to this company called Trafigura, which is a kind of a large trading organization in basic metals. Trafigura is setting up a e-commerce marketplace, B2B marketplace in India, and they're making available all kinds of wire products, rod products, all products of copper to customers in India. The source, the material, the specifications, the pricing on a dynamic basis is available. So said, how does it affect you? Well, our customers are all going and discovering the prices on this, and so I said, does it impact your, about 15% of customers are suddenly not really responding to us. Wow. And what are you planning to do about it? We're going to get anti-dumping duty, and we're going to get something else. I said, how about a digital response? What are you going to do about that? Well, we got to think about it. So, with deference to Mr. Piramal's point of view, I also thought that, honestly, and many of our businesses are not going to get impacted, but whether you like it or not, it's changing your life, many ways. And I was making the reference to somebody in the meeting. Aam Aadmi Party is an indication of what things are going to come. It's not Aam Aadmi Party as in Kejriwal, but transparency, disintermediation. People have to realize what we want on the board. We want people to be wise. We want people to be aware. We want people to be objective. If you objectively observe how this environment in the world is changing, you will accept these things. And if you can't provide that leadership, get somebody else who's going to be able to do that. So even if it's not on the board, get the guy to make a presentation, everybody listens, and if you've got to make changes, make it.
And will it help companies get ahead of the curve? Not too ahead of the curve, but ahead of the curve?
You absolutely, I think it's an imperative. It's not even a choice. And, I think we're beginning to realize that. And people of my age are very resistant. We just don't like this change. 10 years ago, I used to say, my God, everybody's, getting onto laptops and this, that, and the other. I don't know how to switch on a laptop, so what do I do? So you learn. When things change, you learn something else. And cloud comes. You want to learn about cloud. But then you realize, how much can you really learn? How much can you be up to date? How much can you be relevant? The relevance has to be brought through association.
So
We have to allow that to happen.
So for people our age, do you think bringing that change...
Sorry, it's only my age, okay? Nobody else here. Sorry.
Technology is
I'm aware of everyone's age, so to say, but do you think that the change that we see at home from our children today is something we could use to help us bring that change to the board, for example?
Absolutely. I think everybody is aware of it. Everybody is aware of the impact that the knowledge economy, the digital economy is making to us, to interactions with friends, interaction with children. They don't take anything for granted. Everything can be checked, right? So you can't do any of this opaque wisdom, dissemination. It doesn't work anymore. So I think it's coming to the workplace as well. All my colleagues, my junior colleagues, they know everything. And I really can't teach them anything. I can't tell them anything. I just say, okay, I can bring some, I don't have gray hair, but I lost my hair in the process of associating with you guys. But I can give you a little direction, Are you thinking in the right way? Are you thinking long-term enough?
Yes.
Because you want immediate results, you want change, you want this. I agree. But just to give you a little theraal, I'll provide that. That's about it, nothing else.
Wonderful. Very well said. My next question is to you. How does having a woman board member help the company? Being a woman, I'm asking this because we don't want special rights. We just want to know genuinely, how does it make a difference? How does it impact the overall composition of the organization with more female employees?
So there are enough headhunting companies today who are actually doing a lot of board practice. There is a big search which is happening for independent directors all the time.
Actually.
I mean, a few of my friends, female friends, in fact, I think they have to keep on refusing a board position every day almost. It's becoming that kind of a situation today. And why? Why so? And forget the legislation part, we're still far away because I think out of the 1,500 companies, the latest statistics is that 1/3 have still not found. Okay, they have, I think, 15 days left to find. No, I think I read 1/3 somewhere.
Companies.
So they have really very short time left. Otherwise, they'll have to put their sisters and mothers onto the board very fast. So boards is becoming serious business in India because your valuations are now dependent on the composition of your board.
Absolutely.
Okay, so gone are the days when you can put your mothers and fathers and uncles and the same. I think diversity first has to start with the surname. I think first, if you have a diversity, if your board has 80% of the same surname, I think you don't have diversity. Now, why do you need diversity? Okay, because once you have homogeneity in the board, you end up with what is called as a group think. Everybody thinks same. Okay, and normally it's the chairman who leads the board, and everybody thinks the same. And businesses are becoming very complex. Businesses are changing very fast. The pace of change is really fast, and so what you need really in a board is you bring in a lot of diverse experiences there from the digital world, from demographic side, from the gender diversity side. So first, I think diversity, or I would say homogeneity, is bad of boards. Boards should understand this, and they will understand because no amount of legislation will make them to. When your valuation starts getting affected, boards will automatically start, doing that. Because the economic reality is a reality today. Okay, ask any PE fund. I mean, first thing it does is who is your auditor and who is your board member. Your valuation will depend on that. Okay. So now coming back to the gender diversity part, I understand in India, 50% of the women directors are independent directors. Now that's very good actually in one way. So first thing which is happening is that when people are going out to fill these positions, they're going back to professionals. They're going to people who are independent. They're able to get these people, and it seems in South it's almost 60%. That's what I read somewhere. So one, they start bringing an independent view within the board. The second is that generally when you look at risk, and studies have been proven that the moment you have diversity in the board, when you have a gender diversity in the board, your risk handling becomes much, much better. Okay. And the third thing is that your long-term ability to think also starts becoming better. So I feel that it's very important right now. And somewhere I read that 6% of the CEOs in India are women CEOs now. And I think we should thank one person for this, ICICI Bank, I think. We should thank, we should thank Mr. Kamath for the kind of vision that he had in building this maybe 20 years back or 25 years back. Okay, and look at what has happened to ICICI under Chanda Kochar right now. So I would say that it is very important, and there is no need to discuss this. I mean, it's very obvious. So one needs to do it, legislation or no legislation.
True, very well said. I like the thing about the surnames and that diversity. My next question, of course, is to you. How can Gen Y or young directors help companies? And does it help companies in better understanding the young consumers' mindsets and employees, or is there even more to it?
Sure. So actually, I would like to start my answer with actually taking on what he said. I mean, I've been on almost 30 boards spanning 14 years of investing, and I've seen young to listed companies. And I am of the same belief. I think diversity is the best thing that can happen to a board. So I'm endorsing that. But coming to your specific question on age, I think what I truly believe is having I am an investor and I represent my firm, whether as on the board, and therefore I have the power. So what I would like to bring to this debate is how are decisions made. You know, one is the composition of the board, but what I'm asking is what is the composition of power within the board. That I think is very critical, because I know entrepreneurs and I know entrepreneurial families where decision making tends to go towards the patriarch or towards the largest shareholder. So, you know, there are these issues which the qualitative nuances of decision making is what I am most interested in, because the openness of the management or the founder group, whatever you want to take as the base, is really, I think, what makes a difference. I mean, we can have but a young person will be there. Does he have a voice on the board?
Very true.
Right? And this is a cultural reality of our country. We differ, at least we as a generation used to defer to age.
Yes.
It's changing. It's not as fast as it is in the US. Okay, because I also have the privilege of actually, thanks to my firm, sitting on the ringside in US and watching my partnerships, investments into very young companies. And we recently invested in Uber at the $41 billion round. And you know, Uber is what, 3 years old?
That's right.
Right? We were investors in Andrew Mason's Groupon, and we've seen the growth there, and we have, you know, made a lot of money on those kind of things. Now that is Gen Y, right? That is Gen Y investing. These are people who are coming in telling you that we do not want to follow your generation's rules. But are you willing to listen to it? The question is, how does a board really decide? And that is something that I think is changing for the good, but is not changing fast enough.
So if I were to give you a lens and say, look 10 or 15 or maybe 20 years down the line and say, those that don't listen to the voice that you're talking about, will those companies exist, not exist? What's going to happen?
It's a very interesting question, because, you know, I think they've referred to it. I think the relevance of companies is becoming a really big issue. So, I mean, it's not just about companies because of board, but because they are not, you know, disrupted their own business model fast enough. I guess that is really the core. And where does that disruption come from? Disruption comes from somebody at the top saying, hey, do I take notice of a particular trend? I mean, we were talking about this offline, and I have looked at my own investing style in India, and I have tried to be disruptive. Today, I'm sitting across young 4 years from IIT kind of people who have never run a business in their whole life, who have not been even to B school at times, but have such phenomenal confidence in their vision and their ability to attract people and execute, that I am truly impressed. So the question is, yes, if they are finding the capital and are able to get to a certain stage, it may not make you irrelevant, but it will definitely impact your business. I mean, there are studies that go around about how the Fortune 500 companies of 60 years ago is no longer relevant. I mean, we all read those articles. But the key question is that it's not necessary that you should get irrelevant, because I think there are enough of us, the very fact that we're having this panel discussion is really saying that we're all aware. Somewhere in our heart are aware, and we are going to act on it. How fast and with how much conviction is a matter of personal choice.
That's very well said. Now my question would be to anyone who'd like to answer amongst you all. April 1st, round the corner, we heard all that. Where will we find the women directors, the right women directors? Are they enough? Will they be effective? How are we going to make this happen? Any one of you all, or all of you all?
Should I start? Okay, again, some statistics I read. I think it seems that there's a big fallout which happens between the lower and middle management level as far as women are concerned. So we are much better off in terms of entry now. Okay, when we look at entry levels, when we look at, I went to the engineering college in Vijayataya in 1983. You won't believe my class of 60, there were 30 girls in my class. This was 1983, okay? And since then, of course, the things have really improved. So when you look at the entry level, when you look at the MBA institutes, when you look at engineering colleges, when you look at the IITs and all that, I think a lot of women are making it now. And so also they are getting good jobs and they're coming in. The problem which is happening is the dropout which happens between the entry and the middle level. Okay. And there is a statistics for that also. It seems that 50% women drop out. 50% women drop out between the middle and the lower and the middle level, as compared to worldwide 27. So we are double. Okay. So if we really have to seriously look at more and more women making it to the board, and it is a paramount importance that we have to do that, because your business really will do very well if you have that. So we have to change our ways in which we look at this entire set of the transition that happens around this time. And I think that is now catching up quite a lot actually. Companies which don't recognize this, companies which don't make it much easier for the transition to happen, will have problems as they go ahead. Okay, so I think companies will have to start thinking about these things.
So I want to still challenge you further on that, and again anybody, even if a company supports all of that, as India is getting upwardly mobile, and very often the statistics differs because it's a financial need that makes the woman hold on for that long. So even as the country starts moving, will they be making a conscious choice that here we have the best of both worlds, let the man work and we'll stay at home? Then what would you do, even though the company is doing lots of things? How will we address that? Because I do see that happening as well.
See, I'll tell you a little experience. Companies which are in the engineering field are looking for women with engineering background. Companies in the fast-moving consumer goods are looking for women with fast-moving consumer goods background. So I'm telling people, whoever is coming to me, that don't do that. Look at people with diversity, with different kinds of experience. It doesn't matter. Why does the person have to be an engineer? Let the person be an artist. You'll get a different perspective. But it's important, like overseas, like developed countries, I think it's important to take independent directors through training. It's essential that people get trained before they come onto the board. People don't know what to do. Even executives who get promoted to boards, who retire and come to boards, don't really know what the role is. So I think that is the important part, and I think companies must be encouraged to get people from educational institutions, healthcare. You have a lot of women there, and if they are probably trained and given a little background, you have a diverse set of women that are available to be on the boards.
Actually, that diversity is more important, I think, what Mr. Bhattacharya said, rather than just gender diversity, but sort of people from different industries, avenues of life.
Wonderful.
And I also feel that once there is a demand for a certain type of people, then the supply will be created.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Also looking at the digital aspect, do you think that the companies that have this will move at greater speed, will achieve things faster, better, versus not having it? Should there be more than one member? What do you think about that?
See, the composition of the board doesn't matter so much, because all these things are not really done by the board. All these aspects are taken care by the management of the company, which is at a slightly lower level. So I don't think, I'm talking in particular reference to the composition of the board. So I don't think that is going to make so much of a difference. If the CEO is the person who has to decide on the digital, how seriously he has to take put the company in that direction.
So, while I understand the perspective, completely understand where he's coming from, I'm not referring to also the composition of the board. So I agree with that, because I think what is the role and responsibility of the board has to be, has to be clearly outlined, and especially for large cap companies. If you look at the board agenda nowadays, I'm spending 2 days. Look at the new company law. So by having said that, I think the underlying point is digital, understanding the digital world important? And the answer is yes to that. Now, whether you do it through the composition of the board, whether you do it as a subcommittee to the board, as an advisory to the board, is irrelevant. But I will share my own personal journey in investing. So I've been investing, I have 10 years of operating experience before I did investing. And in ICICI Venture, 8 years, I have seen multiple industries. But when I chose NEA because NEA in the US is a cutting edge investor in the digital world. We are the leaders in enterprise. We have close to 14 billion, of which 60% is in the digital world. And not digital as defined as Flipkart, but much, much broader than that. And I truly can tell you that in the 6 years, I still feel that I don't know enough. This is after a constant exposure to new deals which are going to define the future of maybe database or whatever you want to take it. So the point is, I think I reflect Dave's humility in saying, can we really understand what SaaS-based, cloud-based delivery is all about? The answer is no, but I think our responsibility is to at least to understand what we don't know and seek that information.
Wonderful.
And I think that each and every industry, in every company is going to go through this transformation. What I call as democratization of businesses. There are young analytics companies that are coming to us and are saying that, look, I'm going to this offline retail shop, this online retail shop. I don't care whether you're offline or online. But what I'm giving you is an analytical framework by defining what are the key attributes that I have to track, and I will do it on a remote basis, and I will provide you the data as you want on the tap of a button. That is digitalization.
Yes.
And this is a young entrepreneur who got 10 years of work experience in a digital world, has come and started this business, and he has won traditional accounts like Levers, like some of the old offline world. So what I'm saying is that therefore each and everybody is going to feel the impact of the digital world, and how you're really going to traverse this journey is going to be very important.
So that could, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just to add to, I completely agree with you on this, and also with Mr. Piramal, that the board is, the board role is very different to that extent. But if I'm a consumer company, if I'm a company which is in retail, or if I'm a company which is in selling bikes, which was what I used to do earlier, or if I'm a company which is in media, if I'm O&M, say for example, the advertising agency, I would be very worried if I don't have a digital guy on my board.
Absolutely.
And the reason why I'm saying this is not because he'll bring technology, or not because, Walmart must be having one of the biggest digital, team. Okay, so they don't need her to come to teach them digital. I think they need her to come because the way Walmart is going to do business is going to get seriously impacted. And being in Yahoo, she has already seen this impact. So she would be able to actually take you to the next level in terms of strategy, in terms of future, in terms of planning. Similarly, if you notice, it's the Disney company which actually has this person on board, because the way the youngsters, my son today, for example, does not look at the television, okay, but he sees all the movies which are there. He doesn't even look at his laptop now.
Correct.
He sees it only on the mobile actually, and maybe tomorrow he'll see it on his watch. So I think the things are changing to that extent. So if you are a consumer facing company, if you are a company which is into media, if you are into this entertainment and all that, I think the board will help, getting a digital person will help, not with the technology or not with this, but also directionally telling you that what can happen, and get prepared for that kind of a thing. I've seen that at that level, there's a very little understanding of digital.
True.
Okay, and so it is essential, and the other thing which happens is that by getting a digital person on board, you also get a younger person on board. Okay, so suddenly your average age also comes down to that extent.
I think with the average age of the board being 60 or something, the boards have to really learn digital. So it's going to take a long time, because at the moment nobody on the board knows anything what is digital. In fact, I think I was going to ask you to define what is digital. yeah, it is absolutely
I must give you an
necessary.
example.
Yeah.
Please.
I have to give you a name, it's interesting. Mr. G.P. Gupta, I think is ex-LIC chairman, if I'm not mistaken. And he's on the board of Aditya Birla Nuvo Limited. 5 years ago, he asked, and I think he's about 70, he asked about 5 years ago to our retail business, what are you doing about e-commerce? E-commerce is coming to destroy your business. Are you thinking about it?
Wow.
5 years ago. What digital world is he coming from? But he has the awareness. So and also, let's not overplay the role of the board. The board has got a role, but the person who's going to give direction to the company, the future, and the person who will lead the organization in a particular direction is the CEO. What does the CEO think about digital? What does the CEO think about diversity? That is a big issue. That, I think, is a bigger focus that needs to be discussed than the board itself.
Fine, then I'll ask you my last question before we go to the Q&A, and again it's to all of you all. If that be the case, board, CEO, management team, what do we need to change in India? And we're only looking at the US, we could look at the ASEAN countries as well, which have more working women, for example, and also a young population. What do we need to change in India from an educational perspective, from a mindset perspective, or a corporate culture perspective to optimally utilize everything that we've been talking about?
I think we should take age out of the equation now. So, still in all large organizations, I really don't know about small organizations anymore, I've lost touch. But in large organizations, we give too much premium to age, seniority. At the end of the day, yes, of course, we want to differentiate between great performers and not so great performers. But 3 saal to rukna padega promotion ke liye. So this has to change, and I think in the digital world, in the new entrepreneur world, that is what we can learn from. And I can see in the e-com company that we are building, the youngsters don't wait outside for permission to come in. They just come in, put the paper on the table and say, I need you to talk about this. I said, I was onto something. It doesn't matter. Can you just pay attention to this? The guys are just leaving right now. I want to talk to them before they go out. Where are they going? They're going for a movie. Going for a movie? For what? So, this is the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what I would, I guess as an investor, we are very demanding. So I guess, we only invest in companies which we feel will put all this together effectively. And, we intrinsically believe that, okay, XYZ is an entrepreneur who's open enough, who has the perspective, who is sharp enough to know what the shortcomings are. So we have this fairly elaborate process of diligence that we go through before we do that. So we tend to try and drive what you're saying of optimally delivering everything. And of course we fail like everybody else in making assumptions about people and businesses. So here's the thing, I think what I would like to see in India is, we are still very risk averse. So, we do not acknowledge failure, and I think one of the biggest things or we do not celebrate failure or acknowledge failure, and one of the biggest things that has proven time and again is that to allow for innovation, to allow for optimization, you need to allow for failure too. That is something that we are so averse to as a country. I have sat in panels where the audience got up and said, you private equity guys, and we are used to that, have made sure that XYZ company failed. And I said, Yes, there is going to be blowouts, but we are being paid to take risk. So if I invest in 10 companies and all my 10 companies have done reasonably well, I have failed. Because I am not creating the unicorns, I am not creating the change that we need to become, to get to that 7-8% GDP level.
That's right.
So I think what I would like to see is us encouraging risk as investors, us encouraging risk as board members, us encouraging risk as whether it is in taking a young person and making him the CEO. So a lot of things have to happen. We have to open the doors.
Wonderful.
So related example I must give you. I was in the west coast of the US visiting big data companies. Because big data is big now. So you got to know what is big data.
That's right.
So I went to Mapr and Palantir and all this, and it just opens your mind. What are these guys talking about? These
Yes.
guys are like so far ahead.
That's right.
What are they doing? So you get worried. But at the same time, you realize that these are the companies who are actually going to chart out the path for many of the big companies that are operating in this world today. And the point I was sort of connecting to what you were saying is, youngsters are going to pretty much determine the way the new digital transformed economy is going to operate. We have to give a very, very clear opportunity for them to speak up in our organizations. If we don't do that, we will seriously miss the bus. That's my sense.
Mapr is a company.
Would you like to add something?
I think culturally for companies, one thing at least in India would change will be the role of board. We have discussed this many often, and see, frankly, boards are in India are just do some audit committee and something and all that, and they really don't do strategy. I mean, other than of course boards which are which are PE funded and where because you see the Malik owns 70% of the company, so which board is going to really start questioning him, and he normally is also the CEO. But this is going to change very fast, not because of anything else, because the CEOs themselves will need this kind of input from the boards. They will need questioning, they will need a strategy, and I think boards will have to get more engaged. It cannot be a quarter on quarter kind of a thing. I have seen at least I have an example in Bajaj Finserv, the company which we really turned around. Okay, 3 years back it was, I think when I was handling the business at that time, the share price went down to 60 rupees. Today it's 4,000 rupees. And Nanu Pamnani, who's on the board, the vice chairman, I mean, his role, and along with Rajiv Jain, who's the CEO, it was like Arjun and Krishna. Okay, so Rajiv Jain is Arjun and Krishna was Nanu Pamnani. And the battle wouldn't have been won without both of them being there.
That's right.
So I have seen the power of boards. I have seen what boards can do.
Beautiful.
Okay, and bring that. I think this is going to happen more and more. Otherwise, it's just a quarter on quarter, you come and go. So I think culturally this is the change
Wonderful.
which will happen even in large cap companies.
So, Mr. Piramal, while I agree with everything they're saying and there's more to be said, the biggest question is how? How do we bring about that change? And that's my final question to you before we go to the audience who are eagerly waiting to ask your questions. How?
That's a $1 million question.
That's why I'm asking it, but I know you won't give me $1 billion, but still.
Be the change.
Yeah, be the change. I mean, in fact, we are looking out, I have this situation. My daughter is the MD of the company. She's 36, so she is in fact not part of that 35%, 65%. And sometimes I tell her that my worry is not that I am out of date, my worry is that whether you are out of date or not. Because even she is not, she's not 20 or something.
Very true.
But in fact, she is very concerned that we should have a good board, and in fact, I have come today here to learn more than to talk, and I have already, we need a good director can make all the difference. And traditionally in companies like ours, which are sort of mid to small cap, and which are family owned and means successful companies, where the owner manager is quite good and quite modern, quite innovative. We have had traditional boards, like they are all respectable people, and nobody wants a dummy as a board,
That's right.
guy just for the sake, because today you're paying well also. And so you want good people. And my daughter is quite concerned that we have people, I mean, I would be happy to, I mean, if somebody can be a Krishna, I mean, why wouldn't I want it? You know, as I said earlier, that if it is in my self-interest, I'll have the most modern, most contributory board. So, now how to do that is maybe Dr. Surana's company will help us get people.
Well, while this discussion is absolutely interesting, and it's been a pleasure to talk to all of you all, I'm sure the audience, very patient between us and dinner, want to ask you all questions. So we'll take it to the floor and please shoot away. First question is generally the toughest. Oh, there goes a hand.
My question to Mr. Piramal, where do you see the traditional retail business in current scenario of digital e-commerce and B2C business, where if you see the Future Group and Flipkart, where the valuation of the future is, Mr. Biyani could not get in 20 years, which Flipkart get in 2 years.
Well, I cannot comment on the valuation and all, but I can definitely say that the retail scenario is changing very drastically. And I mean, one has to be a real soothsayer to say what will happen after 10 years, but there is no doubt that e-commerce is becoming a very large part of that change. I was once asked on television in an interview that how am I sort of battling this? So I said, well, as a manufacturer, and I don't have to battle that. I have to align myself. It's one more channel of sale. So it's not them versus us. I mean, we will take that channel also, just as there are so many channels and other channels are changing. But to answer your question, we are definitely finding that the high street retailer is definitely not growing. In fact, a lot of them are not even, they're all small businesses. And many of the newcomers, the youngsters, are not interested in running that. Our maximum growth is coming from the hypermarkets, from the organized retail, but not the upper end, not the Shoppers Stop and that, because of the nature of our product, but it's more from the big bazaar and the hypermarkets. And e-commerce will definitely become a very large channel. What has to be seen is how the discounting, they really disrupt the trade. And by giving such high discounts where they make such big losses, I don't know whether that is going to be sustained. It's not going to be sustained in the very long run. But they're getting such high valuations, they have a lot of money to burn.
I think, in fact, it's a good question to also ask Bala for her opinion, because we were just talking about this before we came on stage. So you might like to add something.
With the caveat that I'm on the board of Future Group, so I will just say this. I think, we confuse valuation with shareholder wealth, and I think we have to be very sure that finally, in the long run, whether it's e-commerce or retail, when we as investors make money, when there is true sustainable wealth, value that is created in the company. So having said that, yes, I was fortunate also to be an investor in e-commerce business in 2000. So I have seen that was a very real experience. But today it is real. Whether we move it from the current 4% to 20% or 10% to 30%, I think the writing is on the wall. The mobile is revolutionizing the way business is done. I think there are a lot of mobile first companies that we are seeing and will continue to see. So even e-commerce will, the way it is being done today, will get disrupted. So I think it will continue, but I think the point is that yes, people are going to buy in an unconventional manner, and that is something that each and every retailer has to be ready to deliver. I had, just yesterday I came across, sorry for a really long answer, but I must talk about this. There is a very cutting edge firm that talks about the future of businesses, and this was about Amazon, and actually this person actually said a very interesting thing. He said Amazon is actually opening up offline stores. So it is going to be, and his bet, that gentleman's bet was that it is going to be Macy who is going to overtake Amazon because Macy started offline, started online now. Now is shutting its offline stores which are not profitable, but the converged model is going to be much better than Amazon, because Amazon, in the number they quoted was they spend $7 billion in logistics.
Wow.
$7 billion in the US. So the cost structures are different, so that we remain, but yes, is the consumer there? Definitely and very much. So I wouldn't comment on valuation, I would comment on real business structures, because that's what we look at when we are investing in. And we are also investing in e-commerce now, but what we're looking for is brand stickiness, a brand value, a consumer community which will endure for a long time. That is also a very, very great e-commerce opportunity,
Wonderful.
other than marketplaces that we are seeing right now.
Wonderful. Do we have another question?
The question is to Ms. Deshpande. A couple of years back, there was this Y2K problem and .com was kind of booming, and suddenly it bursted like anything. I think similar thing may happen, and that's why I'm asking this question, is if you today look at all these digital focused companies or digitally driven companies, be it mobile, be it your chat engines, be it e-commerce or whatever it is, the objective, I think, has changed behind setting up these companies. The earlier objectives used to be, like, I want to grow this company, I want to do X, Y, Z, whatever it is. But today, I think the prime objective of most of these companies is valuation. And especially what happened with WhatsApp, and suddenly one fine morning you see 200, 300 crores of rupees in your bank account, kind of excites everyone. Who would not want to kind of get into one such company and ensure that there is a valuation? And I will also talk about one more thing, which is like recently I was talking to someone who was interviewed in one of the companies, which is actually an American company wanting to set up something in India, and they are hiring people, and the CEO today first talks about valuation. He's saying, I think I'm going to look at something like 1,000 crores in 5 years' time. So even when he is hiring people, he is talking about 1,000 crores valuation at the end of 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is. And you've been seeing companies, because you people invest in a lot of these companies. So what do you think about what's happening in this particular front? Is it something similar to .com that you think would happen, or because people are not setting up companies for anything else but for valuation, and they want to exit as soon as possible. So what are your views? What are your thoughts about that?
It's a very good question.
Okay, so so basically let me just take a step back. I think the first part of the answer is, I think if you look at the 2000, the Y2K was not a problem. It was a fear that got capitalized and it disappeared. So that was different from the .com bust that happened. So the .com bust essentially was that it was way ahead of its time in terms of the internet connectivity, the bandwidth availability. The number of shoppers online was grossly overestimated, especially in India, and a lot of the businesses had to be really shut down. So that, I think, is very different as we look at 15 years hence. And I think today the business opportunity is far much more real. What is a question that needs to be seen is how profitable they will be. Are the transactions real? You look at Flipkart, you look at Snapdeal, you look at, I mean, I can name several companies where there are genuine buyers and there are lots of transactions to be had. So the apprehension of crossing the digital divide in some sense of going to a shop and buying versus buying online is disappearing. We have invested in a home shopping company which is actually done 1,200 crores of GMV last year. So those are people sitting at home looking at a television product, picking up the phone and ordering. So yes, there is a reality about the business in terms of that there are consumers who are opting to shop this way. So I do not see the meltdown happening because of because they were unreal. But yeah, I see the meltdown happening more in terms of the valuation that you referred to. So coming to the valuation and the aspiration for valuation, I think it's a great thing. And I think that very often when we invest for a time frame, 5 years, 6 years. We're not strategic investors. We invest for a certain time frame. So if you look at the US, I mean, if you look at domestic M&A in US, or you look at somebody like Cisco, which has perfected the art of buying businesses and putting it into its
Portfolio.
into its mainframe, if I may say so,
Okay.
into its company, integrating it. It's something that the way that the world is going to grow. So I think to have an aspiration that I will be 1,000 crores may seem bombastic, may seem unreal, but it is also getting these entrepreneurs out there. It is making them take the risk. It is making them go out and envision something, and I think it's a very good thing. If it is I don't know what to say. I mean, it is not greed. I don't think it is. I think greed is good if you call it greed in this case. So I think the valuation is something that is going to get corrected because I think today there's a lot of capital flowing into the country, and a lot of us are responsible for, the VCs are responsible for the valuation. But if you take away that aberration of demand supply mismatches, it's a very healthy trend.
And that's probably the only way the market will grow.
Absolutely.
Yes, please.
I just want to get your views, of the panel on the downside to having any kind of regulation, any kind of compliance requirement attached to the board, because similar things, like for example, what comes to my mind is CSR. While there was certain requirement that was imposed on all the companies, and on paper they are fulfilling it. It's really a big question mark as to whether there is additional money that is actually flowing into social programs, and what is the return on investment? What is the outcome that post 2%? Is there more social good that is actually being done? Is there improvement? That's on the outcome front, there's a huge question mark, and there are ways to always fulfill things on paper and not fulfill it in spirit. So is there a risk of a similar thing happening with any kind of requirements which is imposed on how a board should be in terms of the composition? Will it add more risk, especially to the listed companies, where shareholders see that, okay, now the board is having this very kind of star-filled composition, but at the end of the day it could be a paper exercise. I mean, and in spirit, the company might not be such improved in terms of the corporate governance scale, but they can just fulfill it very easily by giving the appearance, and so this also increases the risk. My other question, since there was some mentioning about valuation and how board should be to get better valuation, I mean, isn't that a bit of dressing up at the end of the day? I mean, what is the real benefit of this?
I said that, so let me answer that question. Let me explain this. Okay, I agree with you that compliances, any kind of regulation always has two sides to it. Okay, one side of course is that, obviously you can't live in an unregulated society. Okay, if you're running a bank, you need an RBI to have a regulation. Because there is money which is being protected of the investor, or of also the people who are putting the money in the bank. So regulation sorry will always be there. Okay, and yes, you can always the regulation or the compliance can always be cooked up. Okay, but that does not make compliance or regulation itself bad. Okay, so that's the first. The other way around is that you can always think that because there is a regulation and because there are enough honest companies in this country, they will honestly actually follow the regulation. Okay, so the other side is also true on this. Now, when I talked about the valuation, what I meant was as follows: that when we look at a company, when you look at a company, you're looking at future wealth, right? Okay, that's how the valuation starts happening. when you're looking at future wealth, it is not about current performance. It's about the strategic direction the company is taking. Okay, what is the next level of strategy that they are going? And one of the indicators is the quality of the board that you have. Because a board is supposed to actually set up the strategic direction. They may not participate in creating the strategy, but they are there to vet the strategy. Okay, so that's how the valuation starts going up. And this is what happens abroad all the time. It's not happening in India because we still don't see those kind of boards. What I said is that economic reality will force people to put better and better people on the board so that they start doing better and better work which they are supposed to be doing. Okay, it will take time, but that's how it will happen. So to answer your question, I think the regulation as far as the gender diversity is concerned, it's a very good thing to happen, because if left to by itself, maybe it would have taken maybe 10 years for it to happen. Now you are forced actually to do it. Maybe 50% of the companies will still keep on cooking up, but the good news is that the other 50% will be doing a good job. Okay, and over a period of time, the market realities will force the others also to do a good job.
I would like to add that, saying that if there's regulation, there's going to be fraud and people will go around, that's no argument, There are some people who will always be fraudulent. I mean, there are some people in India who don't want to pay tax at all. But there is no doubt that if the tax rate is 30%, much more people will comply with it than if the tax rate is 70%.
Absolutely.
So the regulation is quite reasonable, I think. And if you say that some people are going to cook up the books, they will anyway cook up the books. And ultimately, all that is reflected in the valuations also. There are in the same industry, you have some companies who are valued at about, let's say, 5 times the book value, and there are some companies which are valued less than the book value. I mean, there are some companies on the stock exchange, large companies whose PE multiple is 1.
Or less than
yeah, it's 1. I mean, especially you see the diamond industry. I don't want to take any names, but there are companies whose PE, I was shocked, that their PE multiple is 1. And they're big names. So all that is in the self-interest. Ultimately, my first answer was that if the board feels that you have women on your board, it's better for the company, they will take it. You don't have to be regulated just because the government says you take 1 board member. If they feel we need 3 members, we need that diversity, we'll do it, So
Some amount of
self-interest. Yeah, of course. A little bit is required also.
Will make us go faster.
Yeah.
That's all. Sure. A nudge in the right
But enlightened people will do it, I mean, like you had Satyam, you have TCS, you have Wipro, you have all types of companies, So not now Satyam is Satyam. They did fraudulent things, I mean, our Indian character is that, I'm sorry to say. Yeah. I mean, honesty is not, it's taken for granted that people are dishonest, And I am saying this in so many public platforms nowadays, that we should expect honesty. We don't,
We should have faith.
Yeah, no, we should expect that people should be honest on their own.
One last question, please.
Yeah. Question is on gender diversity, and I have 2 questions. First one is, what is, in your opinion, ideal composition of, male versus female composition in any organization, at whatever level you can say. Second question what I have, you have shown some statistics about, how things have improved because of higher percentage of women being there, either as directors or, what I want to ask, what I want to ask is, the statistics what is shown is from, not from India, but from outside. So in India, how it is going to really work? Are men less intelligent than women? That is the reason, that's why the results have improved? So I have not seen, I have not seen any analysis, I have not heard any analysis why it has improved. What I have heard is it has improved, but is there any, specific reason you can identify why it has improved?
I'll tell you a little feedback from what I think. Okay, it's of course it's not statistically justified, but intuitively, I find when women are in the team, first of all, there is a different point of view. They don't necessarily agree with the boss and stuff like that. That's one I've always seen. The second is, you don't get into a boys' club kind of, the whole mood changes, when the boss is joking and the whole thing changes. But in the presence of a woman, everybody maintains a certain amount of expectation, decorum of the outcome. And that, I think, is there's one thing that I've noticed. Second is, the nature of the debate tends to change when there is a woman on the board. And usually the women that I have seen in boards are from different backgrounds. And that, I think, helps a lot. Diversity, like I mentioned earlier, not just women, but people from other sort of walks of life. In my experience that I've seen, women from different walks of life come with a completely fresh perspective and are not bothered about what you think, what your background is, why you're thinking of this kind of a business. They don't come with the usual hang-ups of whether they'll be accepted, not accepted. I like that kind of diversity. It sort of helps.
May I have the last word on this, if I may? We just celebrated International Women's Day, and it's a big thing all over the world in our office. And I remember saying then, it really matters to me, is that I'm not really a man or a woman. I'm a person. And it doesn't really matter. And if I followed that my entire career of 27 years, probably my entire life, it doesn't matter. And it won't matter, though of course you need some of this compliance, but it really doesn't matter. That's all.
So I would say also one last thing, sorry.
Okay.
So the fact is that the research was conducted among board, and my guess is that it would be among a lot of male members would have answered that. So the belief that it has improved, they answered that they improved, right? So I think the very fact that they believe that it has improved is a good beginning, good point. It's progress.
True.
Without much ado, thank you very much for being a great audience. Thank you to the panelists.